It is time for the Scramble Podcast alongside my podcast and broadcast partner. That is Chris Flynn in beautiful Long Lake, Quebec. Chris is a three-time Heck Crichton Award winner while playing for the St. Mary's Huskies from 87 to 1990. He's also in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. I'm Paul Hollingsworth coming to you from the birthplace of Canada, the cradle of Confederation, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Chris, it's good to see you, and it's good to kick off this weekend edition of the podcast.
Yes, it is. And Paul, you're in Charlottetown this weekend.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm here. So for in 30 seconds or less, so let's tell people. Back in April, I moved to CTV as the Nova Scotia reporter for CTV National News, which has been a huge challenge. It's been a very rewarding gig, and it's been a tough grind. And I was under the impression that I had pulled away from TSN, possibly doing some freelance stuff for them from time to time, but they needed me to do play-by-play for the Para Hockey Cup, which is the world sledge hockey happening here. So it's Canada, USA, Czechia, and China in this tournament. So I will do play-by-play on Saturday for the bronze medal game, China versus Czechia, and then I'll do play-by-play for the gold medal game, Canada versus USA. I encourage everybody to watch it. It is, first of all the athletes at this event, Chris, each one of them have wonderful stories because they've overcome something, obviously, to put them in that sled as they have a sledge hockey career, a para hockey career. But players like Brodie Roybal, Declan Farmer, Josh Pauls for Team USA especially, not to give short shrift to the Canadian players, but Team USA has won 8 straight tournaments. These are world-class players. They are exciting to watch. So that's why I'm here. Very excited to be here.
U.S. won a close game against Canada, right? It was 5-3.
Yeah, 5-3.
Yeah, and then they're meeting for the gold medal.
Correct. Yeah, and Brodie Roybal. I got my notes here. It was Canada lost 5-3. Declan for the Team USA in an earlier game this week. Brodie Roybal had 3 goals and 4 assists in one game for the Americans. Like he's on that sledge, like skates like the wind. He can shoot the puck through concrete. It's so hard to watch. It's so hard when he shoots it when you watch it. So yeah, Canada lost 5-3 in the first game. They've lost this tournament 8 times in a row to the Americans. They're trying to win for the first time since 2013. The tournament was canceled twice during COVID, so there were two gaps there. But it kind of reminds me of women's hockey. You know how Team USA and Team Canada are kind of by themselves, and there's a drop off. Well, the Canadians and the Americans are very competitive. During this cycle, the Americans are winning, but there's a tremendous drop off, barring a historic upset. It's a tremendous drop off when you get to the second, third place teams. And because of the situation happening with Ukraine, et cetera, we're not seeing any or many Russian teams competing on the world stage, especially here in North America. So Russia's not in this tournament. So that's why I am here. Excited to be here and excited to put on my TSN shoes for one more weekend and sort of make sure that part of my professional skill set doesn't atrophy. Before we start and kick around some football, shout out to Mr. Kirk, Wayne Kirk. Chris, you know him from St. Mary's, obviously.
Yes, he was one of our coaches back in my day at St. Mary's, and he was a good friend of Coach Utek over the years as well, and is still a good friend of all of us, all my old teammates. And yeah, I just found out on Wednesday a couple of days ago he had a heart attack, but he is doing okay. I think he's maybe even going to be back home, if not today, tomorrow. So he's on the mend. And yeah, I just want to say a shout out to Coach Kirk as well, and get well soon, Coach.
I care about him quite deeply. I went to St. Pat's High School. He was my football coach. I won't wax too poetic here, but we all meet people in our lives who put us on a path. He brought accountability into my life and to the lives of my peers. Taught me a lot about physical fitness, Chris. I go to the gym 6 days a week and I run 6 days a week because of that man. He challenged us to be physically fit. He cared about us. He could be very difficult and hard to push us to be good, but he did it from a place where he cared. He wanted us to improve. And I have a tremendous amount of affection for Wayne Kirk. I'm 55 years old. I still call him Mr. Kirk, and I will always call him Mr. Kirk. I hope he's doing well. And to all the people who are watching, when your heads hit the pillow tonight, say a prayer for him, think a happy thought for him. I promise you, he's worth it. He's one of the good guys who's helped build our community and supporting a lot of young men and women over the years, both as a physical education teacher and as a football coach. So, Mr. Kirk, if you're watching, and you might be, we're thinking happy thoughts for you. So, Chris, let's get at it here. First of all, I'll mention Mike Tyson here, and then you can offer your thoughts. I saw today that was Tyson versus Jake Paul's. He was interviewed, and he barely remembers the fight, which is staggering to me. That whole spectacle was a lot to unpack. Hearing Tyson's reaction to it has made me react in different ways. What are your, as you sort out your memories of the Tyson Paul fight, and now we're hearing some of these new details about it. What's your takeaway?
Well, what was fascinating about the fight beforehand was just how a 58-year-old would do against a 27-year-old. Of course, I'm 58, so as a fellow 58-year-old, and me and a lot of us were really interested to see how he would do. And it was obviously a very disappointing fight, but I feel like he, in a way, misrepresented how maybe a 58-year-old who was in really good shape would do. Now, in his defense, he had a flared up bleeding ulcer in the summertime. He lost 25 pounds. He wasn't 25 pounds of fat. He was in really good shape in the summer. He lost 25 pounds. He barely was able to get back in shape in time for the fight, so he probably shouldn't have even been fighting. And during the fight, even the commentator was saying, I don't like his legs. I don't like his legs. Like his feet looked like it was in cement. He did not move around well. And, I think of some of my buddies. I'm not speaking for myself because I didn't play football this fall. So I'm not in any kind of football shape, but I know a lot of guys my age, including even yourself, Paul, that could, run around for 8 rounds of 2 minutes. Now, my friends and you are not boxers, but my point is, I think if Tyson had to do a cardio or a running or fitness test, I think he probably would have failed it. So that was the disappointing part. Was he's 58, he's representing all of us other 58-year-olds, but as far as his cardio and everything, it was really, I think, pretty poor. And like you said, today he mentioned he doesn't even remember most of the fight, but again, I'm not being critical of him because he said he almost died last summer, like 5 months ago. I don't think he really should have been fighting in that fight. Maybe if he would have fought last year or next year, he would have done okay. But it was disappointing. I know it was a month ago, but that's just my 2 cents on how it was disappointing for being a fellow 58-year-old to watch him fight and just to be so moving around so slow around the ring, and that was that's just my 2 cents on the Tyson fight.
Yeah, it wasn't the version of Mike Tyson we were expecting to see. I'll offer a couple of thoughts on Tyson, and we'll move on. First of all, when I think of Mike Tyson, I think of the Buster Douglas fight, late 1980s, between 88 and 89. I remember three things happening. Wayne Gretzky was traded. Ben Johnson had his medal stripped, and Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas in Japan. I remember waking up the next day because of the time zone difference, hearing it on the news, I believe in the morning, and it was unbelievable because he was such a fearsome opponent. I will offer my high-level thoughts on Tyson by saying this. His personal life has been in various states of wreckage. He went to prison for a terrible crime. From my appearances, he seems to have put the pieces of his life back together. And besides this spectacle, it's nice to see him have some semblance of normalcy to his life. Like because he's a guy that there's been a lot going on with him over the years. So I'm happy he got out of it unscathed. He didn't get hurt. And I don't know if he's going to try to do that again. But this version of Mike Tyson, well, all the versions of Mike Tyson have been interesting to follow over the decades. But this version especially has been quite interesting to follow. 58-year-old Mike Tyson back in the ring. And just to restate a theme off the top, he said to the Associated Press, I think it was this week, that he does not remember most of the fight. That by itself was a staggering admission. All right, let's pivot to football. Bill Belichick Former Cleveland Browns head coach, longtime Patriots head coach, probably the most significant head coach in my generation. And he's right up there with names like Vince Lombardi and Shula and Landry. He's going to North Carolina. He's going to the NCAA. I don't think he was ever an NCAA head coach before. So it's like a reverse trajectory for a boatload of money. Fascinating turn of events. He's a senior citizen who we thought was retired, and he's going to the NCAA Division One. What's your reaction?
Well, yeah, shocked. Like a lot of people were shocked. I thought it was fake news. I didn't think like when I heard he was getting interviewed, I thought maybe he's just going through, for practice or whatever. I was actually shocked when he actually took the job. But now, kind of like Dion with Colorado, now I'm quite fascinated to see what's going to happen. I feel like there's going to be a lot of kids transferring, going through the transfer portal to North Carolina, which of course, as many of us know, is a basketball school. It's not even a football school. But I think a lot of young players will transfer over there because a lot of them want to go to the NFL. And what better connection than Coach Belichick for the NFL? He knows everyone. Everyone knows and respects him. So that's a big advantage that he has. And yes, people are questioning how he's going to be able to, relate to 17, 18-year-olds and the way he is. But he's a smart guy. I think he has a plan. And at the very least, I'm gonna be very excited and interested to follow North Carolina football next fall.
I was reading an article this morning. It might have been on ESPN or USA Today, one of the major platforms in the U.S. And I know you know this, but uh, at the highest levels of NCAA, the job of the head coach still remains to go into the living rooms and the kitchens of high school recruits and recruit them and ask them to come play. So they were whomever was being interviewed was joking, basically saying, imagine, Bill Belichick sitting at your kitchen table, hey Johnny, we want you to come play for North Carolina. Nope. Okay. How do you say no to him? I mean, that would be. I have two thoughts on that. First of all, what an amazing, intimidating, and freaky moment that would be to have that guy sitting at your kitchen table when you're a 16-year-old, junior about to become a senior in high school. And then Bill Belichick, who was leading the Patriots along with Tom Brady to numerous Super Bowls, now is going to go into small town America and start recruiting high school students, which is still, he has a recruiting team, but any good head coach in the NCAA is a part of that process. I didn't ever see this coming. I know you didn't see it coming as well. Do you think this is away from the finish's career, or do you think this is a holding pattern, a holding cell for him until he goes back to the NFL?
Well, he's 72, so I don't know. He signed a 5-year deal. Yeah, I don't know. I was shocked he didn't get another job with another NFL team, but apparently there wasn't any NFL teams interested. He had put feelers out, and for whatever reasons, maybe he wanted too much control, but he realized that he probably wasn't going to get another chance, at least not this year. And this opportunity came out with North Carolina. I mean, his good friend Nick Saban just retired from football because of all the changes in the NIL and the transfer portal. And then here's Belichick going back to college football. I think he just wants to give it a try. I think he's going to bring on his own crew, like his son, to coach, and maybe he just wants to do it to enjoy it. He's still short of the most wins by an NFL coach too, so that's maybe going by the wayside. But he is getting older, so for him to coach a few years in college, then go back to NFL, that seems unlikely too. But I know a few of his players and his former Patriot players are doubting how he can have success here at North Carolina. It's shocking, even just talking about it now, that he's signed with North Carolina. But at the very least, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
I have a theory. You tell me if you agree. I have a theory why NFL teams were hesitant to give him an opportunity. I'll make comparisons. In hockey, Mike Keenan and Daryl Sutter, by the way, I'm a big Keenan and Daryl Sutter fan, but they're the kind of coaches who come in and they control everything. In basketball, Pat Riley, when he was running a team, he was running the team. Phil Jackson, Chicago, the Lakers. These big personalities who come in and they're not just there to coach, they're there to control the whole environment. If you're an NFL team and you bring in Bill Belichick, he's not going to be siloed into just one role. He's going to be a guy who wants to have his fingerprints on the greater structure of the operation. Do you agree with that? And could that be a reason to be
Yeah,
hesitant?
100%. That's exactly what it appears to be. And I guess there aren't any owners right now that are willing to to give that up. And a lot of people said Dallas, like, wow, he should go to Dallas. Like Jerry Jones, ultimately he wants to win, so
Hmm,
give Bill what he wants. But and he did sign up Bill Parcells once upon a time, was kind of like
that's
Bill
right.
Belichick. So yeah, surprising. It's surprising.
Yeah, yeah. No, and by the way, I should add one thought. All those coaches I listed off, they're some of my favorite coaches. I'm actually of the belief if you're going to be a head coach in professional sports, you should have all the power. I don't think that job can be siloed. I don't think a successful coach can necessarily succeed if he has somebody else who's another counterpart or co-worker in the organization with a separate vision, maybe building something separate that's separate to the coach's view. So I'm a big believer in how those aforementioned names built their products and built their brands at the professional level over the decades. All right, NFL this weekend. The Bills are 10-3. The Lions are 12-1. I think the Lions are trying to win their 12th straight game. Is that correct? They've won 11. Lions have won. The Lions are 12-1. They've won 11 in a row.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
yeah,
I'm not quite sure,
so
but
now how do you see that? Yeah, so how do you see it? Lions go for their 12th straight, Bills go for their 11th win overall.
yeah,
Interesting
well,
matchup, and I mean, look, I if I had to bet $5 today, I'm going to say the Lions win the Super Bowl. So it feels like a marquee matchup to me.
would love to see that matchup for the Super Bowl. Two teams that have never won it. That would
Yeah,
be awesome to see Detroit and Buffalo in the Super Bowl. But Buffalo had a tough loss last week against the Rams, but their offense looked great. Detroit's had a few close games that they've won lately. In fact, they probably should have lost to the Bears on Thanksgiving. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Buffalo in that game. Both teams are two of the top teams competing. They are top teams that could make the Super Bowl. But I'm gonna go with Buffalo that game. I think their defense is gonna rebound from a poor performance against the Rams. I think their defense is going to play a lot better, and I think Buffalo might just surprise some people and win that game.
you mentioned the Lions and the Bears. That was the Thanksgiving game, correct?
Yes.
That was Thanksgiving. I Tell me what you think of this theory. Look, the Lions are going to cruise to a playoff spot with home field advantage. I'm of the belief that it might have been better for them to lose that game as a teachable moment facing some adversity, as opposed to winning that game, a game they probably shouldn't have won, and convincing themselves a bit further that maybe, hey, we're really good here. I think a team needs to face a bit more adversity, and I'm not sure winning that game was necessarily good for the team and good for the coaching staff. Would you agree with that?
You're right. Sometimes a loss is a good thing. Uh, but who knows? Well, there's still 4 or 5 games
Yeah.
left, but they could lose this weekend. But and they have a lot of injuries, Detroit too, right now. So they're not at their strongest right now. But they're kind of like the Chiefs. They keep on finding ways to win every week.
Yeah, no, they are fun to watch. Eagles 11-2. The Steelers are 10-3. They will face in another marquee matchup. I'm looking forward to this game, just because I like those two football markets. They're kind of gritty. There's something about the Philadelphia fans and the Pittsburgh fans and the branding of those two teams and the historic success they've had. Pennsylvania rivals. How do you see that matchup? Other than the fact it looks to be a very entertaining football game.
I find those two teams are similar. They're
Yeah.
two teams that could challenge for the Super Bowl, but I don't know if I believe in either one. I'm not sure about Pittsburgh's offense and Philadelphia's offense. Philadelphia's running game is great, but I'm not too sure about their passing game. They are two teams that could make the Super Bowl, but I don't think either team will, but they keep surprising me. Both teams keep winning. Philadelphia had a great win against Baltimore a few weeks ago. Pittsburgh keeps winning as well. Uh, like again, they're not two teams I think are gonna get to the Super Bowl, but they could, and I guess they could because of they both have really good defenses and they have good running games. I'm not sure about the passing games, but yeah, that's another good game this weekend for sure, and looking forward to watching that one.
All right, and let's wrap it up with some NHL. Let's focus on the three Eastern teams in Canada. Montreal Canadiens lose 9-2 to the Pittsburgh Penguins in a game that was 3-2. Look, Montreal, I think they're the youngest team in the league, or the second youngest team in the league. They're better than 9-2. They lost a game to the Rangers the week before last, where they were down 3-1 in the third, and the Rangers scored with 22 seconds left. They lost to the Capitals at home last week, and I thought that was Montreal's best game of the year. I thought they played a terrific game, but the Capitals are so good. They're a young team. They're a mess some nights. They're fun to watch other nights. Patrick Laine looks like he's back, and once again, he's the real deal. Through all of their adversity, they're only 6 points out of a playoff spot. Not that I'm not suggesting they're going to make the playoffs, but the East, the bottom tier of the East, is so log jammed. It's just begging for a team to go on a 2 or 3 game winning streak and get into it. So it's like a turtle race for that last playoff spot. Montreal's dead last in the Atlantic. What do you make of them? Or did you figure they'd be a young team who would have these ebbs and flows at this stage of the rebuild?
Yeah, like you said, Montreal's in last place, yet they're 6 points out of a playoff spot. I think they're only 4 points, 3 or 4 points behind Ottawa. Ottawa's 3 points out of a playoff spot. I think Philadelphia's got the last playoff spot, but there's so much parity nowadays that Montreal's in last place. They're only 6 or 7 points out, but the challenge is there's 6, 7, 8 teams ahead of them, and it's so hard to catch other teams. And so Toronto keeps on motoring along. They're in first place. But there's so many teams that are battling for the last playoff spot. And as bad as it looks, when you see Montreal in the standings, they still have a chance if they can win 4 or 5 games in a row. Same thing with Ottawa.
Yeah.
I hear Team 1200 all the time in Ottawa. There's so much doom and gloom, but I think Ottawa is like 3 or 4 points back of a playoff spot. Like, that's nothing, but they're at 500. They're not getting anything going, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And Montreal is kind of the same thing.
Well, I know Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa are 2 or 3 years ahead of Montreal in the rebuild. I think Ottawa is going to be okay, but Montreal, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, there's something that feels a little off with those rebuilds. Of those 3 teams, I think Ottawa is going to be the most okay. Montreal's a couple of years behind them. Montreal has about 25 million in cap space available for next year. So these are early days. Toronto's getting hot goaltending. It's interesting, for all the offense that Toronto has at the top of their lineup, basically Anthony Stolarz is largely responsible for 4 or 5 wins that probably would not be on the board otherwise, but good for them. That's what good teams have to have, good goaltending. So they just had their hot November. They're always hot in November. They were hot again in November. I have little doubt that Toronto will make the playoffs. They could, the East is so tight. A team like Toronto or Boston or Tampa could find themselves in a wild card spot if they lose 4 or 5 games in a row. But I think at the end of the day, we can probably look at the top 5 or 6 teams in the East and know how it's going to shape up. Florida's getting in, Washington's getting in, New Jersey's getting in, Carolina's getting in, Toronto's probably getting in. Boston, I would bet on Boston getting back in. And then you have a whole bunch of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit trying to squeeze out those 1 or 2 last playoff spots. So it will be fun to watch. It will be fun to watch the NHL standings start to congeal as we head into this Christmas holiday season. So, Chris, we will wrap it up there on this Friday night. Best of luck to Mr. Kirk. Wayne Kirk, if you're watching, we're thinking a happy thought for you. For your football fans out there, enjoy the football weekend. And if you're watching TSN this weekend, check out the Para Hockey Cup from Charlottetown, Canada versus USA, Czechia versus China. A lot of fun to be had watching para hockey in Charlottetown. For Chris Flynn, I am Paul Hollingsworth. Thank you for watching this edition of the Scramble Podcast.